questions. So I got about 30 something questions on email on the forum. But what I think we'll do is, since you all are here, we'll prioritize questions in the room. Now, the only thing is that we're starting 18 minutes late, so we'll go probably 15 minutes over, if that's all right with everybody. But I'm going to have to make the answers short so we can get through all the questions, because after we get through yours, and there's 30 more, a lot of the same type of questions come up over and over. So if I feel like I've answered a question already, I might just refer back to a previous one. All right. Yeah, good. All right. So who'd like to start? Griff.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to read out from the questions that
are you talking about the ones you just emailed?
Yes.
Yeah, they're too long. We won't read them out. I'm just going to go. So Griff is, I'm just very mindful of time. We've literally got about 60 seconds to question.
Super.
To me,
Great.
you think about all the questions we've got.
Brilliant.
So Griff, you're saying that people have been saying that after they've been around you, they feel better, and you're feeling that because you must be in my mystical class. Are you my mystical mediumship? Right, because we talked about magnetic healing in class. Yes. So you're asking, people are saying that they sort of say that they feel better after spending time around you, but then you feel drained afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah. And so are you sending the magnetic healing? You can't be sending the magnetic healing unless you consciously decide to do that. Okay. That's the thing about magnetic healing, right? So what you are probably doing is just energetic boundary wise. You're just really, what happens is if somebody's coming to you, first of all, if you're an empath, the amount of time you can spend around other people, sorry, folks, is actually less than what your average human can do, because you do pick up everything from the other person. So you're always sort of connected to this other person on a much deeper level than normal human interaction. And that can in itself be tiring. So the thing there to do is sort of energetic boundaries. Now, this doesn't mean imagining a brick wall. What it means is starting to pay real attention to your own energy. If you start feeling tired, you will need to say, you know what, I need to go. Can I get back to you? And you need to step away yourself, right? You can, over time, the more you become aware and sensitized to your own energy and your own response, the quicker that will happen. So it's not healing that's going on. You've just got the presence of the empath, which makes people feel good, right? But then what it does is it draws on your energy. That's all that's going on there. So it's really just a matter of sort of setting boundaries. If you start to feel a certain person is starting to wear you out, you might need to step back and say, can I get back to you? Can I call you back? Can we meet next week or something like that? Over time, you do get better at managing that. But there are some people who do take a lot of energy. And then there's sometimes people who need or are very wounded or need a lot of attention or, these sorts of things. They can draw a lot on your energy. You just need to be mindful of that. And then you just need to step back and take care of yourself for a while. Okay. Over time, you get better at just sort of automatically doing that. There's always going to be people that wear you out more than others.
Okay, thank you.
Some people just demand so much of your focus and so much of your attention. If you're taking, for example, if you're taking a nice little sauntering walk with somebody in the park and you're just sort of observing the birds and the this and the that, that's one thing. It's usually very nice, energizing, peaceful. But if you're with somebody who's always talking and always got this to talk about and that to talk about, or this problem or that is going to be very tiring. So you're just going to have to, until you can get to a point where you can just not get drawn into that, you're just going to have to set those boundaries by stepping away. All right, good. Mm-hmm. And then your other question, oh, my phone's gone. So you're talking about your artistic work has high healing frequencies. Oh, so the bottom line is, the still line is a question that a few people have asked. How do I know what I'm sensing or what I'm getting is from me or the spirit world? And many of you have got that question. Everybody asks that question. So I will say, if you are in your normal waking egoic state, it is coming from your mind. And if you are in a flow or an altered state or a feeling like an inspired state, and what's coming feels like it's flowing, then you are being inspired by the spirit, right? So I'm a writer, so I know this with writing. Some mornings I get up and it's like rolling a rock uphill, trying to get one sentence written. And I know it's because it's all trying to get squeezed and forced out of my head. And then there's other mornings I'll get up and I'll just sit down, I'll just write something, and it'll just flow. And next thing I know, it's lunchtime and 2 pages are written. And then, you know, you've been in the flow, you've been connected to the spirit world. So what's happening is you're not channeling the spirit world, but you are being inspired by them. And you'll notice it really, the effort and the flow, the feeling of effort and the feeling of flow is a dead giveaway for that. Also, if you are very much attached to the outcome, if you're painting, writing, using whatever, and if you're trying to force it to be a certain way, or you want it to move along in a certain direction, head. Because if it's being inspired by the spirit, it will flow to wherever it wants to go. Does that make sense, everyone? Yeah, which is why if you start deciding what the conclusion is going to be when you just start writing the first sentence, you're trying to control the outcome. You can have an idea of your general direction, but you've got to make space for that to take on its own flow, and that makes space for the spirit. And that's in the artistic context. But in the context of mediumship, for example, it's the same thing. If you feel that you are in the altered state, in the power, if you feel you're connected, if you feel you're there, everything is coming inspired by the spirit. And if you are not feeling the connection, if you don't feel a flow, if you're in your head and you're trying to reach and grab things, or if you're in your head. So the easiest way to say this is, if you're in the power and the presence of the spirit, if you can feel, if you can work with the practices that I have freely available in our group for sitting in the power and the presence, and you get very used to how that feels for you, everything you work with in that space is coming as inspired by the spirit, and everything that's coming when you're not in that space is coming from your head. All right, yeah. Good. Griff, answer your question? Good. All right. Who is the next person? Rather, Nancy? Yeah, Nancy.
When I'm in a relaxed state, I often see images of people. I have no idea who they are. What is that about?
It's the hypnagogic state. So it's the twilight space between waking and sleeping. And nobody actually knows what the hypnagogic space is. I will say it is sometimes a loved one of yours can drop in an image or a symbol or a message to you. It's very easy to get through to people in that space. And so, but if you are picking up information in that space, it's usually coming from, so I find this all the time. So my loved ones have certain little calling cards I know they have. So if I wake up in the morning and I see a daisy, which happens quite a lot, I know it's my sister saying good morning, because she always does that with the daisies. And so it's just an easy thing, right? If you're just randomly seeing images and little sort of movies playing out, that's just hypnagogic, slipping into dream state. Actually, it doesn't mean anything, you know, because your own loved ones are not going to come play movies. With psychic imagery, medium spirit imagery, doesn't come playing out like a movie. It just comes in these quick images, or a feeling, or a sound, or a sense. But anything that's playing, that's what we're talking. That happens in the hypnagogic state. Like you see an image, you'll see a load of images, or you'll see like little snippets of like a little movie playing out. That's just the hypnagogic state.
Well, sometimes it's a very clear image of a person that I do not know.
Yeah, no, it happens to me.
Same thing? Oh, okay.
Hypnagogic.
Okay, thank you.
Normally, you know, if you think about the spirit world is intelligent. If they're going to expend the amount of energy it takes to expend to communicate with one of us running around in a bag of bones, it's going to have reason for it. I'm just going to randomly pop in and out. So if it's somebody that you recognize, it's got to be because they want a message. You know, people generally don't just show up on the doorsteps of complete strangers, because what's the point? You know, if you see them, when I was a kid, I used to see them standing at the end of the bed. That would be spirit manifestation, you know. But I see this all the time. You see these faces. So I wouldn't worry about it. If you want to use that hypnagogic space to communicate with your loved ones, ask them to show you little things, little messages, signs, you know, you ask them to do that. Right? Otherwise, just let everything that's going on in the hypnagogic state just be the hypnagogic state. All right. So we don't want to get caught up in that. And then we're looking for complete strangers in the spirit world, trying to shake messages out of them for other strangers, right? It doesn't make any sense. All right. But talk to your loved ones and ask them. You know, it's a really perfect time to get communications and messages from your loved ones. But like I said, they're going to come like psychic messages, not like hypnagogic messages. All right? Okay, lovely. Nancy. All right, who else had a question? If you want to put your little reactions hand up, it's really easy for me to see who's going. All right, Zania. Is it Zania? I can't hear you to turn on your microphone.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Karen. So my question is, I accepted that I have a particular past loved one who has come to visit me at times, like with clear messages. But one of the last times he visited me, I remembered part of the conversation, but it was really me speaking to him. But I woke up and I had bruising, like physical bruising, about this long, a few inches long, in the inside of my thighs. And I had very strange, it was just kind of, I had like a very strange trip to Chicago, and I had been staying and doing some kind of soul searching in a writer's workshop in the pyramids in Mexico. But I don't connect my dream with him with that bruising, because I felt that there was some other, like, I don't know, energy around me. And
I'm going to just stop you there, Sonia, because first off, if you've got bruising, I'm going to say you'll probably find somebody else to tell you something different. But me and my experience is, if you've got bruising, probably you accidentally did that to yourself. The spirit world, there's no such thing as nefarious dark energies that come and do us harm. Just does not happen. Does not happen. So my sense
that's
from
what
that
I believe.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I believe, that it's just been something not related.
So I think what
connected.
you did was you had some kind of a dream that was disturbing. You probably hit something, did something that caused the bruising yourself, particularly if you bruise easily, it would have been easier. So the spirit world, I'm not going to go on about this because I want to get on. The spirit world does not send nefarious creatures in the middle of the night to beat us up.
Right. Because someone tried to tell me otherwise. I said, no, I don't believe that.
Yeah, I'm sure that person was a highly educated individual. Be very careful who you listen to.
Right, and I don't. That's why I think I did one of your last talks just to listen, and I took notes. And then when you sent this out, I thought, here's a good chance to ask somebody reputable.
The stuff.
Thank you.
The stuff that goes on. This is why I have these sessions, because the stuff that flies around, and I just, on an aside, people go around and they say, are you a trained medium or a natural medium? And some of you have taken class with me, I've heard me say this before. All mediums who are mediums are natural mediums. Some mediums are also trained. And people think, oh, well, I've had somebody say this to me, well, a natural medium is better than a trained medium. And I say, well, if I was going in to have spinal surgery, I would rather have a neurosurgeon that went to medical school than somebody who's just got natural ability. It is critically important in our world, particularly because it's unregulated. It makes wisdom and knowledge and education even more important. And I cannot stress the amount of harm and damage that is done by these people who just share opinions. An educated person knows there is no such thing as objective truth. An educated person understands their perception colors everything. Anybody who's trying to tell you anything definitively, oh, this is exactly the way it is, be skeptical of that, because I'm saying I know that spirit world don't come because I've been aware of them standing, like I said, at the end of the bed since I was a very small child, and I've spoken and communicated with thousands and thousands. And any trained and educated medium I know some. So somebody was asking about the Arthur Findlay College. That is the gold standard of mediumship training and education. So I've got 3 certificates of awards from there. Spent a long time studying and training. And I'm going to say that a lot of what goes on, the majority of what goes on is absolute nonsense. And if everything about the spirit world is healing and love, even people who had terrible lives here are there healing. The guy downstairs for me was murdered, shot dead, and left on the floor one night. And I came home and I was aware of somebody in the apartment. And this person did not seem very happy. And I was like, I have no idea who you are, but I'm going to bed, And I hopped into bed under the covers. And then I find out the next day because the place was crawling with cops. Oh, yeah, the guy in 4C was murdered and he was lying on the dead, on the ground. And so, but I was aware of him, but he didn't, that was it. He was feeling a bit frantic. His body was lying with 2 bullets on the ground, I was aware of him the next night after his body had been found and his family had been notified, and they take the body away in a stretcher out into the ambulance, and he felt much, much calmer. So if a murdered person is not going to come through like a crazy person, nobody is. All right? Spirit world is always healing, always love. And anybody, even if they had a disturbed life here, we know from working with them that they are healing in their own time and their own space, but they are surrounded by healers and the loving presence in that discarnate realm, in those discarnate spaces to help them along. All right? Okay, good. All right, beautiful. Grace.
Thank you. Hi. I was wondering what would be a good response to hearing knocking. I have been, like knock, knock, knock. I go to the front door to see if someone's there. No, it was not that kind of knock, but it's very much like a knocking on the door.
What's
and
the
maybe
response?
2 or 3 days in a row. Pardon me?
Just say, who is it?
Okay.
Somebody's knocking. Who is it?
Okay. And then just listen up.
Yeah, see if they tell you.
Okay.
You could say come in if you want, but it sounds like they're already in. But you got to remember, there's no such thing as space. The space is the illusion. I joke when I say that. Space is an illusion, right? If you're hearing a knocking, it's probably just somebody trying to get your attention. Just say hello if you want to. Or if you don't want them, you just say stop knocking and go knock somewhere else. You have the power. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Who's next? Yes, Leah.
Hello. How do I explain this question? So when I trained a long time ago, and I was in a spiritualist church, and I noticed that the same people would come every week trying to connect with their loved ones, or they'd book one-to-one medium sessions to connect with their loved ones every single week. And I've never worked as a medium since a long time ago. But I thought in the future, if I ever did, what is the risk there? If you get a client that's constantly trying to communicate with someone that's passed over, does that have negative effects on the person that's passed over? What are the risks? Obviously, I know the risks of over-reliance to the person that's alive, but to the person that's passed over.
There's no risk because they're all present anyway. We have this idea, and this very archaic sort of 19th century or medieval idea, that there is such a thing as actual geographical space. Discarnate consciousness, all consciousness, it's like, I use this analogy because it's sort of the easiest thing way to sort of explain it. It's like an ocean. It's like Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this a lot. There is the ocean, which is just all consciousness that we are all part of all of the time, even now. We think we are here, but we are consciousness. So we're always connected to the source, the one single consciousness. And so while we're in our physical bodies, we're like a wave, emerges from the ocean, goes back into the ocean. We are always part of the ocean, right? So this is not a case of we're trying to drag somebody out of the spirit world from somewhere else to here. Your loved ones are only a thought away. We are all in the same stream all the time. The only thing that is different is that we are, first of all, like Jersey cows because we're so heavy because we're in this sort of physical vibration. But our consciousness is always connected there. That's how mediumship works. It's how anything works. Telepathy, psychism, empathy, healing, anything. That's how it works because we are all part of an interconnected consciousness, whether we are physical or not, right? So if there's a loved one in the spirit world, I talk to my mother all the time. I'm always asking my mother questions. Do you think that means I'm dragging her away for what she's so busy in the spirit world? She doesn't want to talk to her daughter. We've got to start breaking down these concepts, these very old concepts, that there's space, that they're somewhere else and we're having to haul them here to our vibration. We're doing them some harm. In the 21st century, we know from consciousness theory, we know from the new science that we have all existence is one large probability wave. We know this from science. And when we look at consciousness theory, the work of David Chalmers, if you're interested in more on that, we know that there is just this conscious. What exists is what we turn our focus and our awareness to. So I could sit here with you right now, and in 5 seconds, I could say something to my mother. My mother is going to hear that thought. She doesn't have to get on a train or a bus or something and have to sort of chug her whole way to New York City. A thought away. Everybody's a thought away. So all of these ideas are very old, archaic concepts. A lot of them, I've just finished a doctorate and I've done a lot of research on this. A lot of it comes from sort of the ancient Greeks, the Iliad, you know. A lot of it comes from Dante. It's all fiction. Medieval times. A lot of it sort of arose from the schism in the church when Martin Luther nailed those things, and they did away with purgatory, you know, and the Protestants did away with Catholic purgatory. A lot of these things are emerging from these previous beliefs. None of it is real. It's just a set of beliefs. So it's easier if we just think we are all in one endless interconnected flow that arises and goes like waves, right? So if you want to talk to your mother every single Monday, your mother is going to show up. Why? Because she loves you. Now, if somebody is constantly, so I won't let people come to me for private sessions, like, you know, 6 months apart, because I don't want people fostering a dependency. And I designed an entire course called Eternal Bonds to help people develop their own sensitivity in that in-between space, so that they can start building their own relationship with their loved one and not depend on a medium. You really don't want to be depending on a medium all the time. It's fine to come every so often, but not all the time. So if somebody, a few things go on when the same person keeps showing up all the time to a medium. A lot of the time, believe it or not, that's the medium. The medium is familiar with the comfort, say, of this person's granny. And their mind will always go there. And so they will always draw the granny in. So a lot of this is down to the medium. Mediums get into comfort zones, you know, and will always go to the gran, always go to here, always go to the same type of person. If you've got somebody, another thing that happens too is people come, and you need to be very well trained and very advanced in your practice for this. People come all the time and their mother is right there. And they no, because they can't get out of their own way to make space for the mother to talk about what she wants to talk about. I had one of these earlier today, you know. I had one time where, like, for example, a guy came and he's like, he's never had a contact from the afterlife, never from anyone. And his friend came talking, and he was talking about his car. No. I'm like, why? He didn't have a car? He did, but I don't know why he'd be talking about his car. Well, it's not for you to know why he's talking about his car. He's come saying something about his car for a reason. People, a lot of the time, throw up the blocks that make it impossible. And so the same person in the spirit world can be coming all the time because they're not open to being able to get out of the way to let that person speak. I mean, I say this in my mediumship classes. If you went to dinner with somebody and every time you opened your mouth, they opened their mouth to share something with you, you started telling them how they had to speak to you. I mean, how long would they stay at the table? They'd clear out pretty pronto, right? So there's so many things going on. There's so many things going on here. But we need to, a lot of this, sort of these superstitions are another thing that throw up these blocks, right? So nothing's going on. The spirit world are not someplace else. If your mother doesn't want to talk to you, if your mother, you know, you got a different issue, right? You got a different issue. Rarely, very, very rarely happens. Because in the spirit world, people have healing, they have hindsight, all the rest of it. So I have never, ever come across somebody. I've come across some terrible parents who are terrible here, who come across contrite, apologetic, trying to make amends. I have never, ever in my entire life had somebody come from the spirit world saying, I was really nasty to you when I was, and I'm still nasty to you. It just doesn't happen. No, it doesn't happen. Just answer your question, Liam. No. All right, who's next? Anybody else got a question? No? Oh, 2 questions. Sorry, Marina and then Rosalie.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Karen. It's very helpful to have such an hour of conversation.
Hour and a half.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
I have a question. I have actually a little bit more than one, where I would like to get a little bit more clarity. When I start connecting to a sitting for somebody, and I started being prepared already prior to the sitting, first of all, I have to close my eyes. Otherwise, I would not feel anything. And this is a problem because I know you taught us, you teach all of us during all the classes. And I get a little bit in panic because I know I have to close my eyes. I will not get. So it takes time. It lasts a little bit longer. And then I also think about your words. Few seconds and you should get already the connection. You should feel it. I don't. I need longer. And maybe due to this panic, I really remain in my head because I do not feel anything. I do not feel this some sensations for a connection. I just have to sit and wait. And anywhere, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, I start to perceive, to see pictures with somebody. And they are correct. So to me, it is that I'm not really in my head because I have never seen such people and they are confirmed by the sitter. But I cannot get clarity what is going on with me.
Well, you're very early in your development, Marina. I mean, how long have you been doing this? Not even a year, right? And so if you, for the moment, need to take 2 minutes to get yourself settled and build the power to make the contact to do that, right? But over time, that will get shorter and shorter. So don't panic about it now because you are quite new still. So just take the 2 minutes. But if you're going to work, like if we're doing a circle or something and you're up next, start preparing before it's your time. Don't be sort of standing there, everybody looking at you with your eyes closed for 2 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Get yourself ready to work beforehand. The reason I say don't close your eyes is because it's too easy to go into your mind. And I'd rather you not start developing habits now that you're going to have to work even harder to break later. So what I would say is get used to maybe just for a moment, just to close your eyes to get yourself settled. But then when it goes to trying to make the contact, soften your eyes so that you're not actually focusing outward, or just soften your eyes and turn your attention inward to the power or in the presence. But you can't, I really would like you to really work with closing your eyes just for the 2 minutes to get yourself settled. But when you have to work, your eyes have to be open because it looks really weird as well, right? Okay. So just keep practicing it, but throw yourself some bones. I mean, you're still very early in your development, you know, so you're doing very, very well for somebody who's this early in development, but just try to not create habits. So just be aware, just give yourself a little bit of time, but just know, I'd rather you keep working with this, with the soften eyes, you know the way you soften eyes and your eyes just go out of focus and you're not looking at anything. And, you know, when you're in a daydream, your eyes go out of focus. Better off doing that. So at least your eyes are open a bit while you're making the contact. Also, the other thing is very easy to go into your imagination when your eyes are closed. Right. So these are things that will be issues later. That's why I'd rather you lay the groundwork now to make sure they're done right. Okay. But take the 2 minutes to prepare and then start working. And then over time, that should just get like that. Right? Okay. Beautiful. Rosalie.
Hi, Karen. Could you talk about the use of writing as a spiritual practice? I feel like you mentioned it in one of your Q&As. It wasn't trance writing, but I forget the term you used.
Contemplative writing, was it? Or soul writing?
Spirit writing, maybe soul writing, maybe.
Yeah.
I was going to say
I used to
spiritual
teach soul writing. Yeah, so soul writing is when we work with using the pen to basically access our inspired state. And so I have a fan on because it's so hot. So I'm blowing everywhere. It's when we move into soul writing, we move into making those deep connections with our own inner spirit. We move into the inspired state of the flow, and then we just allow words to emerge. I do a whole course on it, actually. I haven't got one scheduled at the moment, but it's a beautiful way of being able to just sort of allow words arise and then be expressed. So I did it in one of my trance courses. We did a week of writing. So it wasn't automatic writing, which is when the spirit is moving the pen. So when we move into an altered state, which when we begin trance is all inspired state. It's not that state of oblivion where the spirit is actually meeting us there, and we're able to allow words and ideas emerge from the spirit, not from our head. We write, it usually comes in sort of fragments, and then afterwards we can kind of work it into something wrote it into an essay or a poem, whatever. It's beautiful. I love teaching that course, actually.
But so that type doesn't come from your own imagination or your own.
Soul writing, well, first off, that's a very gray area. I mean, what's your imagination? If you're inspired, you're going to be connected somewhere. You know, and if you're not inspired, what you write is probably going to be a shopping list. Let's face it, right? So if you're in an inspired state, if you're in that flow, the spirit, you know, even if it's the spirit incarnate, forget we're all bodies in spirit, and our spirit is connected to the spirit of all. So we're just turning our awareness there and going into that sort of inner depth within us and allowing ideas to arise from there. It is arising from the soul or the spirit. And the deeper we go, then it is arising from the soul, but also inspired from the divine. Right? And so what we express is not just, oh, let me imagine what it's like to have a pink elephant. Let me write an essay about a pink elephant. You know what I mean? It becomes much more profound. Does that answer your question? Am I answering your question?
Yeah, I think so. I just hadn't heard the term soul writing, and
That's because I made it up.
Cool.
Because, you know, trance writing is a much deeper state. Soul writing you can do anywhere, you know. Soul writing is really, to me, soul writing is more closer to, say, the transcendental poets like Emerson and Thoreau, where you can sort of be in the world, but be connected to the world so deeply that you're actually starting to see things beyond just your eyeballs, just the event. You're seeing things beyond just the events of what are happening, you know, and that becomes that sort of soul writing, spirit writing. The reason I don't call it spirit writing is people think spirit writing is automatic writing. You know, does that make sense?
It does.
So automatic
It's almost
writing,
like you're meditating, you're having a meditative experience, but you've got your pen, you're writing it while it happens.
you could be walking, you don't even have to be writing it while it happens. You could be walking out and have the ideas when you're walking down and sitting under a tree or see anything at all. These things, it's basically moving through the world and seeing beyond the superficial. You don't have to sit down, you don't have to sit anywhere and do it. You could be wandering along. You could say things, record them into your phone, write them out later. You know,
got it.
It's a way of being. It's a way of being present and deeper in the world, and then expressing them. In a nutshell, I would say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Mary.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Hi, Karen. Okay, my question is, because you're talking about soul writing. You know, I read the book, you know, Julie Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, where it's the morning pages. And I started that practice like in 2016. And I'm not a writer, so I was never interested in writing, but I was so interested in a direct experience with the divine. So I did the Julie Cameron's morning pages, and beautiful poetry came out. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And so through the writings, I put a poetry book together. So, and so my book is the Book of Divine Love Heart Opening Poems, because I realized that it was because I had done a past life reading, and that I was one of Rumi's disciples. So I've always had the thread of the poetry. Well, the poetry door opened when I did that practice. And so I want to know, is that automatic writing?
No, automatic writing is physical mediumship. It's when there's somebody from the spirit world physically moves your hand.
Oh, okay.
Trance writing is where we go into, so soul writing and trance writing are closely related, just that soul writing, you can be present, very, very present in the world. Trance writing, by definition, you have to be kind of sitting in some kind of altered state, some kind of trance to be able to, and then it just kind of comes from there. So, you know, all of this work there's no black and white to any of this work, you know, so, but I'm a firm believer that the language of the spirit is poetry. I'm a firm believer that the spirit doesn't express itself in prose. It can be free verse poetry, you know, but one of my favorite sayings I always have in my soul writing classes is I always write poetry, even in prose. But that's naturally the way it comes. When we start to see beyond the superficial, to see beyond sort of surface events into the world, the entire world, like W.B. Yeats used to say that, there is another world, but it's in this one. When we actually start to see into the other world that's in this one, we, by definition, it's so beautiful and so transcendent that it can only be expressed in poetry. Which is why I love kind of transcendental posts. So yeah.
Okay, so I believe I'm a poet, a mystical poet. So my writings would be, because the poetry, the flow, because I'll do it in the morning and just, I'm looking at the paper and go, oh, this is so beautiful, because the essence is divine. It's love. So if you had to label that, what would you label that as?
I wouldn't label it at all.
Oh, okay.
I think
Okay,
labels are the enemy of creativity.
Oh, that's right. Okay, no labels. I've heard that before.
I have actually done a practice in the class where I had people write a poem for somebody else in the class, have a little chat, write them a poem. They write a little poem, and then now everybody go into the altered state and now write a little poem for that person again. And the difference between the poems in the normal waking state and the altered state is unbelievable. Beautiful. Lovely. All right. Anybody else got a question? No? That it?
Oh,
Alice, are you hand up?
yeah, I'd like to, can you hear me? My
Yeah.
Zoom is kind of weird. Okay. All right. So Karen, when you've had contact with, in your own life, say,
Can't hear you, Alice. It sort of sounds digital. Did you email your question in? Alice, I can't hear you.
About the fact that, they're in, I guess, just metaphorically speaking, the spirit world, which, oh, okay. I actually, else, wait. Oop, nope, can't do that. Oh, damn. I can you hear me at all or no?
Yeah, but it's very hard. You can only hear every other word, really.
Okay, well, so when you've had contact in your own life with your fiance or your parents, do you have a sense of what their experience is like in the realm that they're in, called the spirit world or unflowing consciousness?
Yeah. So what I'm going
consciousness?
to say, I think you put that. I thought I had this on a sheet. So I'm going to say,
I registered that.
Yeah, this goes for everyone, right? We cannot understand what is going on in the afterlife because it is beyond our frame of reference. So when people from the spirit world or liminal space, whatever you want to call them, start communicating with us, it's like everything has to be translated into a language we understand, which is the language of the physical world, So you can get images, but everything has to be approximated. And it's where I always say all the time, remember perception, because people will swear blind. I had an out-of-body experience and I went here and it was this color and that color and this happened and that happened. We will see what we are conditioned to see. We will co-create those realities based on our own perception, which is why, in most of the NDE literature, Hindus generally don't meet Jesus. And Christians generally don't meet Krishna or the Buddha. We are conditioned to certain things and we will co-create those perceptions. And so what we do know from just the feeling of what is being shared in the spirit world is I've come across lots of people who are very excited about the wealth of knowledge that is available to them. Now, that might be shown as a library. That doesn't mean there's a physical library in the spirit world. It just means that they have access to this infinite amount of wisdom. We know from the way people feel over time, particularly, that people do grow and do heal and do wise up, You know, a lot of people come back, make amends and all the rest of it. And so we know those things, but in terms of tangible stuff, that I would be very loath. I've seen things and I would be very loath to say that's the way it is. I would say that's the way I perceived it. You know, so when people come in mediumship sittings and they're like, oh, I've got your dad here and he's driving his, you know, his big old red Morris Minor. It doesn't mean he's driving his big old red Morris Minor. Generally what it means is he had a big old red Morris Minor, which he loved to drive. And he's trying to say, this is one of the things I loved. This is how I feel now. Or whatever it may be. Sure, it was more profound than driving Morris Minor, but you know what I mean? So we have to always, I think one of the beautiful things is some people need lots to sort of feel a sense of certainty or a sense of control or a sense of definition and stuff. And we know there is no such thing as certainty. And that's just not from us, that's from the Buddhists. The Buddha's been saying that for 2,000, more than 2,500 years, you know, so there is no certainty, there is no control. And once we can like let that go and just be okay with not knowing, it's very freeing. Very freeing. Yeah. So as long as we know people are over there, they're present, they're here when I need them, they can see what's going on, I can talk to them, they're probably healing, learning, growing, whatever, that's about the limit of it. I mean, I had somebody one time ask me, can you drive a truck in the afterlife? You know, and it's like, well, perhaps if you project a truck into the afterlife, you could probably project yourself into it. But is there an actual truck in liminal space? Highly unlikely. The atoms that form the metal belong to the physical world. Right? So I'm going to say, just in summation, that I have people always say that. Did your mother, your partner, anybody tell you what it's like in the afterlife? You know, they could till the cows come home, and without being there, I wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Just one thing that's come to mind, and some of you have taken mediumship classes with me will have heard me say this before. There's a place here in New York, all over the place, called the IAC. I think it was called the International Academy of Consciousness, and I can't remember the name, so bear with me. So this guy, I think either Portugal or Brazil, set up this thing. He was having all these out-of-body experiences, and so the IAC was set up to basically train people in a very scientific sort of way to have out-of-body experiences, right? And so they've come up with all this new language, and the auras, now the velo, and they've, you know, rebranded everything to try to get rid of all the associations that we have with all of the words that we have in this world, right? So anyway, they tell a story about the owner, who I think he was Portuguese. He had many out-of-body experiences over many years. And as the years passed, he's got higher and higher, and he was met higher and higher levels. I mean, we know kind of from Swedenborg that there are definitely tiers and advances we know from lots of people, we know this from Jackson Davis and the spiritualists as well, that there is a tiered levels. So people keep advancing through liminal spaces. So you don't just land in heaven. It's kind of like in my father's house, there are many mansions idea, right? But it's all spaces, different advancements. So this guy from the IAC, you know, after many years of doing these and getting to increasingly advanced levels in his out-of-body experiences, meets some guide and asks the guide some hugely profound question, like, it's like, what's the purpose? Like, what is life, or what is real? Some really huge, you know, existential question like that. And the guide says to him, there were names for all these people, I don't remember them. The guide says to him, well, I can't tell you because you wouldn't be able to understand. And the guy's like, no, I'll understand. I'm really intelligent. I have all this education. I know all this. I have a high IQ. I have all this. Tell me. I have loads of experience, and I definitely will understand it. And like that, he said, in a split second, so much was downloaded that he didn't know if he had heard a piece of music or seen a mathematical equation or seen a color. Like, not only could he not understand the information, he couldn't even understand how it was shared. And the entirety of it came in a split second. So just because it's outside time, you know. So I actually love these things. So I'm not one for like, let me go magic up some fantasy concept of an afterlife. I'm more into, because I come from a Buddhist background as well. You know, I prefer to be able to think, you know, we really don't know, which just adds to the mystery, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, sorry, can't describe anything else for you, but that's it. All right. Anybody else? Any questions? No?
Oh, at my second, I don't know if you can hear me.
No, can't. I'm just going to whiz through some of these questions because some of you might have been thinking the same ones. Very common question. I have been practicing evidential mediumship for almost a year. What can I do to get a better connection to spirit? I've answered this question. For any of you in the spirit space community, there are like, it must be about 100 responses to different questions that have been asked me over the time. And we get often the same questions. So what can I do to get a better connection to spirit? You sit in the power, you keep practicing, you bring yourself into a healthy mind, body, spirit space yourself, and that will help your mediumship. If you're stuck, if you hit a plateau, I don't want to spend time on this, I've answered it already. There is a question, a response in the community. What do I do when I've hit a plateau, and different ideas for being able to get out of that? So I'm just going to whiz through that question. What's the best way to address a sitter from whom you are getting negative vibes and blocks to spirit evidence? Well, is Mary here? I thought I saw Mary earlier. No? Mary, this is your question, yeah? So what I would say is you have a few options. One is you can say, this is not working for me. I'm going to stop this and refund your money, which is if it's making you, if it's having if it's really upsetting you, you've got to remember, you've got a responsibility to yourself, your own mediumship, and to your next sitter, right? So if you've got somebody who doesn't want to, so I'm actually pretty firm with people now. So I will say either, listen, this happens all the time at mothers, that people got contentious information. The mother comes, say, for example, to offer an apology, and the person's not ready to hear it. And they'll just be, no, and they'll be like this, no. And you can say to them, do you want to hear from your mother? And if they say no, sometimes they'll say yeah, just because they feel like they need to, but you need to just empathically know, do they really or not? And you can say to them, listen, it feels like you're not ready to hear from your mother. Let me find somebody else for you, right? There's no point in suffering through it if the mother's trying to say something to heal and the daughter or the son doesn't want to hear it, right? So you could do that. But don't feel afraid to, if you're really not feeling it, to say no. Often what will happen is if I have a mother saying no, and then you get to the second communicator and they're the same with the second communicator, just say this is not working. And usually what I say to people is you've got 10 minutes and we can stop and cancel out. And if you insist on going and beyond 10 minutes, I don't care what happens, you're still paying, right? But we can stop at 10 minutes. But the primary thing is I've actually gone longer with that people, and they've just gotten my nerves so much. I've just said to them halfway through, I can't do this anymore. I've got to stop. Because there's no point in suffering through. You got to protect your mediumship. And you have to be able to sit down, get settled, and then you've got to sit and work with the next person. So you have a responsibility to them as well. A lot of the time people have blocks like that is because they don't want to hear from the person. A lot of the time they say they do want to hear from the person, but they're not healed themselves enough to be able to get out of the way to let the person speak. So every time you say your mother's here and she felt a bit, she was feeling a bit sort of self-conscious. No, she wasn't self-conscious. She's saying she's self-conscious. No, she wasn't. How do you know what and they, you know what? You can't hear what she's saying. There's no point in this going on. So you can try to work. Sometimes you'll get eventually over that with them, but you need to decide, is it worth it? But don't feel obligated to continue something that's harmful to you. Could be, I don't mean harm. I mean just harmful to your mediumship or your disposition. Sonia, did you have a related question to that? Does that answer?
I do. I'm not a practicing medium. I do have psychic abilities. I do have clairvoyance, and I wanted to ask you. I'm interested in doing your class, your 7-week class in the future. If you're still going to offer it going forward, but I had an experience. I've had more than one experience, but one clear experience where, and I wonder if this is connected to a term called walk-ins. Someone told me that I should read
No,
about
you've
walk-ins.
got to stop talking to these people.
So I
Yeah,
didn't read anything. Yeah, I did. It's funny. I thought about what somebody like you might say, because I also had been in a Buddhist layperson's program. And so my, I guess, direction of coming in has to do a lot with more I like an academic, scientific,
What I'm going
I
to
guess,
say, because
foundation.
what I'm going to say, just because I want to get out, because we're running out of time also, is I would say you need to just get rid of all this. So the best thing to do is actually go read intelligent, well-informed stuff. So what I would say is go to the recommended reading on my website and read some of Colin Edwards' work, read some of that stuff where actual sane people are talking about sane things, you know.
Yes.
If you haven't read my book, you can read my book, although it's memoir, but read it anyway. There's no such thing as a walk-in. It's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard.
Well, what is it, Karen, when someone, so a friend of mine, her mother came to me in a dream.
Yeah.
And the dream, so when I was an undergraduate, I practiced lucid dreaming to do like investigative essay writing on dream analysis. So I was quite aware that when I woke up that morning, that was not a regular dream, because
it's
I
a
was speaking to
visitation.
someone.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm just trying to, sorry to cut you off, but we've got 30 questions in 5 minutes.
Sure. So I'll just stop right there.
Yeah, it's a visitation.
Why does someone choose?
It's a visitation dream. Very, very, very common. Any dream that you get that's very vivid is somebody coming to, because the dream state is an altered state. And so loved ones will often come. It's very natural for people to come in the dream state because it's easier to get to you. And they might be just coming to let you know something, or just to let you know they're okay. A lot of the time they'll get a visitation dream. They don't tell you anything, but they feel nice, or they feel calm, or they feel happy. And all your that's the message. Tell the friend, oh, I had a visitation dream from your mother. She felt beautiful. She felt really calm. That's it. All right. If you want to develop mediumship, first I'm going to say start reading some intelligent stuff to get rid of this muck, because if you need to get that stuff out of your head first. Right?
Yeah, a friend told me that she's at Arthur Findlay College, and I have been a member of the Psychic Studies College of London when I lived in London a couple of years ago. And so it's part of the reason to why I'm very careful, as you mentioned. So rightly to we have to manage our energy, and as high empaths, not allow that drain that happens from people who are blocked themselves to not.
You just don't, you know what? Just don't talk to them. That's as simple as that. Just don't talk to them. Just like, excuse me, I gotta go. If you want to learn mediumship, the next course I have coming up is for advanced mediums. So it's people who've been with me all year. It's at the end of the year. But if you want to start working with your mediumship, we do have the foundational course is masterclasses there, and then you can find people from the group to do the practices with if you want to do it that way, if you just want to kind of get a start on it. But definitely start doing some of the reading on that reading list first, to start just getting rid of the superstition. No point in starting if you're dragging that stuff with you. Amazing the stuff people say, I don't know where it comes from, but I would say do that and get a good calm, good footing with it. But all of the resources are there. There's also some of these sorts of questions people ask that are in the responses, so I would go there. Are you a member of the community?
The community for the CHIP network?
No, my own community. If you go to my website, join the community, join the Spirit Space community there. There's tons, all those resources are there. There's loads of sponsors, all the reading, loads of videos, ton of content there. It's all free. So go have a noodle around in that, and then
wonderful.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you use a cabinet for trance work? No, we don't have to. Who asked me that? Nancy, you asked that. No, cabinets are usually used for physical mediumship. It's because it directs the energy. It's actually a very old school 19th century thing to do, early spiritualist thing to do, but it directs the energy into a cabinet. But mostly it's for physical, and it's really not really done much these days. What's a fun and easy way to practice your psychic abilities? Valerie, I don't know if Valerie's here. That's a very, very long question. There's a free workshop on ESP or psychic development in the community on YouTube. You can go and do that. There's lots of fun practices in there. You could do that. Where do I go from here? Sorry, I can't answer that. You have to answer that yourself, whoever asked me that question. How do you maintain good boundaries? Catherine, you asked me that. We kind of talked about this earlier. That's just something between you and yourself, and you deciding where Catherine's here somewhere. And can I see Catherine, or she go? There you are. That's just it. Like we talked about this earlier. It's just a matter of you know, did I answer this already for you? I did. Yeah, just excuse yourself. Somebody's wearing you out. Just somebody, if something doesn't feel right, just politely excuse yourself. Just goes for anything, right? You know, the thing about energetic boundaries, that they really come from more like a way of thinking and being, you know, how we are and how we move in the world and what we will put up with and what we won't. You could just decide those, you just decide those things. You don't have to do any mad running around with bells or feathers for that. Yale, is Yale here? No. So Yale's asking about the soul writing, inspired writing. I sort of answered that already, so I won't go into that again. How do I know my loved ones are really present in spirit form from elsewhere? Practice. Sandra here? No. All right. I'm just going to say, if anyone wants to really work on knowing more about their relationship with their own loved ones, the best thing to do is just to, I designed an entire course in the master classes just to help people specifically with that. So I recommend, it's called Eternal Bonds. I recommend that. We'll try to do a workshop at some point. I did one last year. Try to do another one again later. Marina asked your question already. Anita, do I offer courses in mediumship development? Yes, but they start early in the year, so we're moving into advanced now, but the master classes of the early classes are still available, and you can find practice partners in the group. After Eternal Bonds, Priscilla here? I thought I saw Priscilla come in earlier. Yeah, Priscilla. So Priscilla, you asked, after the Eternal Bonds, what's the next step for us to wish to communicate with our loved ones, but not become a professional medium? So the first thing to do is to realize it's not a linear journey, it's an inner journey. So it's not like we do this and then we learn the next thing and the next thing. What we do is we learn the same thing on a deeper level. So we just keep going deeper. It's an inner journey. You know, does that make sense to you? Just do the practice and deepening the practice. It's like we were saying earlier, the difference between sort of soul writing and trance writing is the depth of the altered state, the depth of the awareness. So it's a matter of really just working on your attunement practices and continue to work, just continue to work. It's the same thing. Just continue to do the work on and deepen your power. How can I maintain a daily practice to connect with my guides? That's from Kate. So I would say do the practices that are in the community, the sitting in the power practice. There is actually a whole free workshop there on journeying to meet your spirit guides. Feel free to do as well if you haven't done that as well. Sit in the power and just invite your guides to be present with you and to make themselves known in whatever way they choose. Right, which is already 9 times out of 10 very different from what we choose, right? Whatever way they choose. That help, Kate? Yeah. All right, another person about what should I do with my life? I'm sorry, I can't answer that. How do you develop confidence? Oh, this is from Joanne, and I think Joanne was coming in, I got kicked out. So how do you develop confidence in your intuition and or channeling? You just keep doing it, and you just keep practicing, and you just keep practicing with other people, and you just keep getting feedback. There's no other easy way to do it. You sit in the power and you do your meditation, you need to practice self-care, mind, body, spirit care. And then over time, a lot of it, you just have to choose. And when you choose, then you start to see it play out in your life. Does that make sense? It's like anything. We can choose to be positive. They say happiness is a choice. We can choose to be miserable. We can tell ourselves we're happy. We'll probably be happier if we do tell ourselves we are happy than if we tell ourselves we're miserable. It goes for everything, right? So you just choose to be open to intuitive messages. Because the worst thing people do is like, I want a sign, and then the sign is there like neon lights, and they're like, oh, that can't be a sign. Got to be open. Got to be open. If you're not open to magic, you'll never see it, right? How to bridge a gap, knowing a loved one on the other side is with us. So again, Elizabeth, I don't know if you're here. Didn't see Elizabeth. Same thing, I would say, I've answered this already. First thing to do, I would say, take the Eternal Bonds course. It sounds like an unabashed plug, but honestly, it's a 4-week course. It's 80 lessons. So I can't cover it all quickly, but you will get what you need to learn. You will get what you need from that. How can I responsibly develop my psychic abilities? Sonia, you asked me this. So how can you responsibly develop your psychic abilities to help others? Responsibility is just having an ethical and a moral compass yourself. Developing your psychic abilities is one thing. Being helpful with them comes down to your moral compass. All right. How to know if you're a medium. Oh, Priyanka's not here. I don't think I saw Priyanka. No, how to know if you're a medium. You'll know if you're a medium if discarnate people are talking to you or communicating with you. When is the right time to start charging for your mediumship service? That's a very big question. Anybody in the room have that question? Curious about that question? Yeah, Mary. So I would say, when is the time to start charging? I would say when you can work in a private sitting for at least 45 minutes, or when you can do maybe three short 7-minute contacts, one after the other, and place them all. But the most important thing is when you know that what you're getting is very helpful and authentic, and you know you're working mediumistically and not psychically, for one thing. But the other thing is when you are confident enough in your ability that you can do things like say, you know what, this is not working, I'm going to end the session, rather than feel like you have to keep trying to prove something. When you feel strong enough to not be affected by the sitter, because I always say, and some of you have heard this from me before, the hardest part about mediumship is dealing with the living, right? When you can deal with that, because they will throw you, you need to be able to recover, right? Because nobody comes for a sitting because all is well in their world. So they're always coming with a load of baggage. Always. Nobody comes for a sitting because all is well. Why? Because somebody's died, or because somebody's been dead a long time and they're still working through trauma. But pretty much everybody sitting in front of you is in pain in some way, shape, or form. And some people manifest their pain as anger, and you've got to be able to deal with it. So when you feel like you can hold your own, that's an important part, because you don't want to go out too early and get thrown, because then you'll pack it in. All right. Catherine here? No? Catherine's asking, I need more hands-on practice, but I need someone who can guide me through. The best thing to do is just take classes, meet other people, join the community, keep practicing. And Nellie's not here, right? I didn't see that. How to contact my spirit guides free workshop in the course in the community you can do. And what can I do for healing? Well, I'm not going to go into that because I talked all about that last Tuesday, as those of you in my mystical class will know. If you want to work with healing, you need to just start working with somebody. I decide what you want to do. Trance healing, Reiki healing, whatever it is, and actually start working practice. Like, there's this myth, I'll just say this just to sum up. There's this myth that we just sort of bounce into the world as, you know, just these mediums, and we've got a power greater than everybody else. Everybody has the ability to heal. Everybody has the ability to do mediumship. Everybody has some psychic ability or some intuitive ability. It's a question of degrees. It's like music. Anybody can learn chopsticks. Not everybody can play a concerto, right? So it's a matter of degrees. Everybody has the ability to some degree or another. It is critically important, and and anybody who studied with me knows I'm a huge fan. So even when I'm teaching trance, we teach Sybil Birch texts. When I'm teaching healing, we teach Edgar Casey texts. I'm a big advocate for education, because there's all sorts of people running around with turbans on. Sorry, don't mean to be denigrating of turbans, and hoop earrings, and they're just throwing all sorts of uninformed stuff out there and doing an immense amount of harm. So anybody, I said this to anybody who is interested in developing anything, go and find a reputable teacher who is themselves knowledgeable, educated, and trained, right? And can actually teach. It's not just about getting you to do what they do, but can actually teach you to do what it is you do to the best of your ability, you know? But don't be listening. If you hear anything that is not loving or healing or compassionate, it is not coming from the spirit world. So all of the rest of that superstition is probably coming from Dante or purgatory or Homer, but it is certainly not coming from the world of spirit. Okay? Good. All right, we flew through all of those. Thank you all for staying late despite our despite our never doing a special Zoom room again. We'll just go with my old tried and tested Zoom room from now on. I haven't put up August's gathering yet. I'm not sure what we want to do. Any ideas for what you'd like to do for the August gathering? What you'd like to do is what you're communicating with your own loved ones, little workshop, 45-minute workshop. Yes, Priscilla's very enthusiastic about that. Anybody like to do that? We do a few little talks and practices. Yeah, shall we do that? Okay, we'll do that in August. And then we'll get a post, probably the end of August, we'll get that posted up for you all as well. It'll be in my regular Zoom room. So next time, click the blue button. That'll be all there is to it. All right. Good. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your lovely questions. Hope this has been helpful. Stay cool wherever you are, and I will see you next month.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.